Hello, everyone. Hello, and welcome to this panel at IJCAI. Thanks for joining us. And we have a particularly interesting panel, I would say, this morning. It's this morning in my time zone. We have three distinguished panelists, and the topic is diversity in AI, a very relevant topic if you've been following the news, even in the last few months. And the MC of the panel, asking the questions and moderating for us, is my colleague Francesca. And so I'll hand over to Francesca. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Neil. So we all have seen a number of scandals during the last years that have shown AI systems in the bias of favor of white and even white male persons. And the reasons like biased data sets, unattentive algorithms, and mainly missing tests with diverse subjects. Yet these are symptoms that our research and development and management has a problem with missing diversity. So, but in short, differences matter. This is known for decades, and this is why we are here. And we have, as Neil said, we have three wonderful panelists. We have Tanusha Tanu, who is research software development engineer manager at Microsoft Research in India, where she is part of the new Center of Societal Impact through Cloud and AI. Before, she co-founded a startup that applied IoT and machine learning in the area of energy assets monitoring and optimization. And before, she also focused on low-cost solutions for developing countries in energy management. So she basically represents an industrial as well as a female perspective in our panel. Welcome, Tanusha. I hope I pronounced your name correctly.
Absolutely. Thank you. And very excited to be part of this panel today.
Our second panelist is Xin Geng. He is currently an associate professor in the School of Computer Science and Engineering, Southeast University in China, with a PhD degree from Deakin University in Australia. He is working in the area of computer vision, pattern recognition, and machine learning. Welcome, Xin.
Hi, thank you for inviting me to this panel. I'm glad to join.
The third panelist is Bo An, is a President Council Chair, Associate Professor at the School of Computer Science and Engineering of Nanyang Technical University. He is also co-director of Artificial Intelligence Research Institute of NTU. And prior to that, he spent a year as an associate professor at the Chinese Academy of Sciences. He was a postdoc at the University of Southern California after he received a PhD degree from University of Massachusetts Amherst. His research interests include multi-agent systems, computational game theory, enforcement learning, automated negotiation and optimization, and many more topics and application areas. Welcome, Bo.
It's my pleasure. Thank you, Francesca.
So I think we start with the first round. Well, it appears to be a very simple question, but exactly that is the central question. So what is your take on the term diversity? What do you think of when we talk about diversity? Who of you wants to start? What does diversity mean for you? Tanusha, do you want to start?
Sure. So I would say that many times we have looked at term diversity typically in few scenarios like gender diversity or basically the differences or the communities which are kind of not represented in the common areas and in the more popularist terms. So that's what we have been looking at as in primarily as in when we talk about diversity, what comes to our mind as the first thing is the gender diversity and its impact that we have seen in different facets in terms of innovation in industry and the economic power set and many other things. But truly is in when we look at diversity, it has really many facets and dimensions. one is of course gender diversity, but there are many cases like mental or physical disabilities, or race and ethnicity and their impact on getting the opportunities at various different workplaces and innovations and economic opportunities. When we are specifically looking at AI and its impact, I also look at diversity in terms of linguistic diversity, let's say. So how different languages are represented in the technology and their impact, or also in terms of economic disparity, and how that diversity is kind of impacting who gets access to technology. So I would really like to kind of look at diversity in the broader sense and its multiple dimensions, and how technology can help somehow mitigate or broaden the shorten the gaps which are already exist because of diversity in these different dimensions.
Thank you very much. Bo, do you want to continue, or do you want to share your point of view?
Yeah, sure. I think Tanusha just gave a perfect explanation of the meaning of diversity. I think in addition to gender, there are many other aspects as well, such as culture. I noticed that all the three panelists are from Asia, and like I'm in Southeast Asia, so we have many neighbor countries. Like pretty much, I can see their AI research and development in those countries are not hot or not advanced at this moment as compared with North America, Europe, and South, East Asia. So certainly those countries, they're underrepresented. I mean, those people, their data, their problems, everything is pretty much underrepresented. I think with that, potentially lots of AI system built based on data or people who are from other places. Maybe there will be bias and lots of other issues in those AI systems. Certainly, we need, those are issues. We should, get people from those places get involved.
Can I add some comment?
Please.
Okay. I agree with Tanuja and the board, but I think this is a question with multi-dimensions. And as in addition to gender and area dimension, I think is another dimension of age. Young children and elderly people have less chance to use AI products. And we are trying to do something to change that in China, because I'm personally is doing one project to write some textbooks for primary school students. Because nowadays young children has less chance to learn. Most studies about AI start from the college study. We are trying to move the education of AI forward to middle school or even primary school to make AI diversity more accessible for young children. And the case is even worse for elderly people, because they have less chance to learn all those new fancy words of AI, those very difficult to understand the terminologies of AI, and they can't even use those intelligent machines. I know many old people in China cannot even use ATM in the bank, so you have to wait for hours to just deposit some cash. So I think we need to take actions to make AI technologies more accessible for those young children and the elderly people. And also, I think Tanuja has mentioned economic. So poor people have less chance to use AI product because fancy new AI products are always expensive. So we need to take action to make the AI product cheaper. So we can invent new technologies that cost less resources, like need less data, less labels, less GPU, and to make new AI products affordable for everyone. That's my comment. Thank you.
That plays also into this linguistic diversity, that you need to have your AI products basically in your native language to make them accessible. When we talk about accessibility for diverse audiences, I think we also need to be aware what it means to be underrepresented. I'm in a very privileged situation. And this awareness of being underrepresented is something that you already talked about. That, well, we need to be aware that people cannot afford things, that they might have different difficulties in accessing because it's, well, everything is in English or whatever. Do you want to comment on this, what it means to be underrepresented?
So maybe I would start with it. So typically is in when we are looking at, let's say, technologies which are available, let's say language technologies which are available, as in many times with the advances in NLP, a lot of question answering tasks or summarization, as in there are many things which are very simplistically available with the new language models in English or many European languages which have large data sets which are available. But when we look at countries like, let's say, India or many Southeast Asian countries, where there are, it's a multilingual culture, which means that there are many languages which are spoken by larger population. But unfortunately, digital data is not available for those languages to kind of build technological solutions. So especially, let's say, when we are looking at critical information making available for larger population, typically, let's say in current kind of pandemic situation, or when we are trying to provide crisis relief in war zones, not knowing the language of the local community becomes a huge barriers. And in such cases, having the technology solutions, let's say translation from English to these kind of low resource languages would be extremely handy and would be extremely impactful for providing right support for the larger population in those areas. But unfortunately, since we do not have language technologies today which can be deployed on these low resource languages, and also we do not have digital data collected for these many of these languages, we are not able to provide that technology support to the larger population. So that's really a challenge today, and certainly is in when we are looking at building new technologies. As Zin rightly pointed, we need to make sure how we can create simple models, how we can create models which would work with smaller data set and which are cheaper, so that the technology can be accessible to this larger population as well.
I guess I fully agree with Tanusha regarding, the people, many people like in Southeast Asia, they don't have access to not so advanced AI tools, AI systems. That's from a user's perspective. I think another perspective I just mentioned is from the research community in those countries. Based on my understanding, the community is very small and they're still at a very early stage. If we can improve, that situation, perhaps the issue could be somehow addressed, because those people can get involved in research, then they might be able to produce AI systems, AI products, which can be used by those people. That's my point.
Yeah, I agree with Tanuja and Bo. I really think underrepresented communities will have consequences. For example, what we have already talked about different dimensions. If rural areas have less chance to access AI products than urban areas, then this will enlarge the gap of work efficiency in rural area and urban area. And if people with different age range have different accessibility to AI products, that will make life even harder for elderly people. And if poor people cannot afford AI product, that will even worse. That will make the gap between the poor and rich even larger. I think that all that consequences require us to take actions. That's my point. Thank you.
What I find very interesting is that my questions that I prepare are absolutely useless, because my point of view was very too much towards, well, we need to have those people, diverse people to test things, so that we as developers need to be attentive. But the way how you view diversity is much more basic. So it's all, when we talk about diversity now, it's about access to technology. So it's giving access to basically sharing technology with people that otherwise would not have access unless we really pay attention to give that access to people. That is a very interesting take on diversity. That's very interesting. So from my European perspective, that means basically that awareness for diversity is simply not enough. We need to go out and try to actively develop technology for people that otherwise would not have access. An interesting point, I think I'm now diverting completely from my rounds of prepared questions. An interesting point is what Bo mentioned, is that underrepresented communities are also not presented in research. No? And I looked into the registration numbers for IJCAI. We have something like 2,000 registrations, and only 5 of them are from Africa, for example. So there are more people from my university than from a complete continent. And this is in a situation in which IJCAI was never so cheap than this year to participate in IJCAI. And the question is, how can we bring those communities of researchers that don't have so many funds to travel around the world or make big projects, how can we bring them to the main conferences so that we don't have a European, US perspective? What do you think of? Do you have any idea? Or?
I guess certainly we need to do more. I think I don't know. I think IJCAI can do more. It's so cheap, but maybe there are lots of other constraints. For instance, maybe some people even don't have internet access or stable internet access. I don't know the registry numbers for Southeast Asia countries, like neighbor countries, you know, like Myanmar or Laos, those countries. What's the situation? I guess the numbers registration would be still really no. Even it's very close to Japan. There's no you know, time difference. We're in the same time zone. Yeah, I think we have to do more. I think you mentioned the term called awareness. We have to do more. I guess there has been lots of effort to help those people. There's a research community called AI for Social Good. Basically, try to do use AI as a tool to help people, especially people who are poor, who have health issues, who pretty much solve problems in those underrepresented places or community. So I think we certainly need to do more.
You again point to the user perspective.
Yeah, user. I mean, not only user, but also people who are designing AI systems as well. I think it's a whole.
I think the price to participate in this conference is just one aspect. And I think that's an easy problem to solve because we can always find more sponsors. We can even set up some free registration for certain areas. But one problem is not so easy to solve is the size of the community that they're interested in AI. I think Francesca, you mentioned Africa, only 5 registrants. That because the research community in that continent is smaller than Europe, I think. So we need to attract more and more people in those areas to be interested in AI research, and maybe make AI education more accessible in that area, and more people joining this area to be interested in IJCAI, maybe such kind of main conferences. That's my point.
Mm-hmm.
So I just wanted to add one more point that as both Bo and Zin mentioned, it's also important to have specific mentorship program for researchers coming from diverse communities, because they would certainly need additional kind of support in terms of bringing them to the right platform and providing them the right support in solving the right questions. And it's important from both the perspective, as in it's important to get these researchers as well as users from diverse communities to access AI technology, but also from the solving these different problems that we initially talked about. Let it be solving, let's say, linguistic diversity problem in AI, or computer vision problems of working with multiple different ethnicities and other things. It's important that we bring people from these different communities who understand the nuances of culture and the right problems in their domain to solve those problems, rather than we kind of looking at it from the outside in kind of perspective. It's also important that we bring right researchers from the community to solve those problems, and hence specific diversity focused mentorship programs in the universities, in academia, fellowships for PhDs. I think this is really essential and crucial at this stage to bring really diverse community in the research at AI.
There is one, Marie wrote a remark on the question and answer, saying, I'm not sure whether the complete audience can read those remarks. She wrote that the conference IJCAI will be held in Cape Town, South Africa in 2023. And she also wrote that we hope that that will bring more visibility and connection from our friends and colleagues in Africa. I think fellowship, this mentorship is a very, very cool idea, actually. Because at some point, well, at least from my European perspective, in all my research career, I just participated in conferences when I had a paper at a conference. And I think for that, I can imagine that in an environment in which resources are scarce, then you don't simply go to a conference. You also need to have a paper there. And then we would need to support, maybe with some mentorship or some platform for discussing things that they can go over the threshold of having an accepted paper at a conference, because I think it's highly if submission and acceptance is highly competitive. If you're living in a small research community, this is very hard. But on the other hand, we don't want to lower the quality. So at some point, we need to lift those underrepresented communities to participate on the same level. And I think what Xing said with triggering more education in AI, there is also important. So, but I think it is a dilemma to have high competitive submissions and underrepresented. It starts with the lingua franca English. If you don't if you're not capable of speaking or writing good English as I am, I'm always have problems with English, then you don't pass the first threshold. Yeah. Can you think of any form of kind of affirmative actions? So Marie just wrote another text that IJCAI made a concerted effort to attract more undergraduates through an undergrad symposium, with presentations by students that don't count as IJCAI papers. So that is the easy access channel. But that is for, can you, no, I will read that because I'm not sure that everybody can. So but give them an avenue to participate in the conference, for networking, and to tap into funding sources that their own institutions, as well as student scholarships from the conferences. Perhaps something similar could be done in a global symposium for researchers from around the world who might not otherwise have an accepted paper as a conference. That is basically the kind of affirmative actions here. Maria Gini added, I should add that IJCAI puts lots of money each year in scholarships for students to attend the conference. The problem is more complex. As you said, it requires building scientific communities in geographical areas that are underrepresented. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I can see those effort IJCAI and IJCAI have put. Certainly we can do more. I know that many years ago, this international AMAS community, they often have those type of schools, summer schools, those type of things in different places. I think this is relevant to what Xin just mentioned about education. It's not only about attending conferences, but also educate the research community and also even from kids. And also maybe, I know many NGOs provide support to support research in those underrepresented areas, countries. Maybe we can do more. You know, we have to do from all the perspectives, from AI products, education, research. I think we can certainly do more. I remember, Maria maybe know more. I remember there are some workshops or summer schools on multi-agent systems in Africa and South America, in those countries who need help.
Yeah, so I would just like to add certainly that something which is sort of summer school or young researcher symposium along with the main conference, which allows the researchers, or let's say PhD students from these different diverse places to participate in the conference, be part of the main conference, but also able to present, let's say, their thesis work or their research ideas with larger community of researchers, getting feedback and ability to network with the researchers in different geographies. That is certainly a good starting point for the long-term mentorship or long-term working relationship. So of course, as in many conferences have started either forms of smaller workshops or PhD thesis presentation for PhD students. So those kind of things are, I would say, that are certainly is in small affirmative steps to get diverse population to these larger conferences and get them also a venue for representing their ideas.
Just to add one point, I think future conferences should always consider online participants, because that will dramatically reduce the cost. For example, flights and accommodation and all that sorts of things. Even after the pandemic, I think the pandemic forced us to think of ways of online conference, but it will be a good way for cheap access to those main conferences. That's my point.
Yeah. We have probably all of you noticed that it's much easier to have guest lecturers in your institutions if the guest lecturers or guest presenters don't need to travel. So where my university is Örebro, that's, sorry for all people from Örebro, it's somewhere in the forest in the middle of Sweden. It's extremely hard to travel there. But with the pandemic and more of the virtualization, we could invite more people to give the talks. And this is something that also other underrepresented communities could actually use to have. We are not, it seems that first that our environment is shrinking based on the pandemic, but now with all the virtualization, it might open and we might have more and more networks and facilitate it, as you said. As you said, it could, the network.
Same here. We found it's easier during the pandemic to invite people to give a talk in our school. Just as you described, people just don't have any excuse that I cannot give a talk, I'm too busy. It's easy, it just costs you 1 hour. It's very easy. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But for that, as Bo said, we need to have internet connectivity.
Yes, that's a big, very basic requirement. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Marie wrote another remark that the Grace Hopper celebration of women in computing launched a series of regional Grace Hoppers around the world to broaden access to the networking and technical exchange that happens during those events. Maybe the AI community could envision such spin-off events. Those do require a great deal of local organization and effort to pull off the energy, but the energy might be there. So that means it always needs a local counterpart in those geographic regions, a person who takes over responsibility and engages. And that is maybe also something that also requires some kind of courage, that you dare to take over responsibility. How can we support or trigger that people dare to take over responsibility and dare to organize local of these sub-elements or sub-events, specific events?
Yeah, I think IJCAI or IJCAI can certainly form some committee or some kind of organization to coordinate such kind of events systematically to give support and to promote, AI development in those underrepresented places to improve diversity.
How do we find the locals that might want to do that?
Yeah, I mean, like AI Journal has such kind of calls, right? A call for hosting some events, for instance. They can provide financial support. I mean, there are certainly ways to do it. Or we can actively engage, communicate with leaders in those communities.
I think I've participated in one event called PreConference. Before those major conferences like CVPR, like ICML, IJCAI, IJCAI, those people have paper accepted by the conference. They gathered before they actually go to the conference and communicate locally with other people. So I think that's a good way for larger audience to not actually go to the conference, but to locally communicate with authors of those already accepted papers. We call that pre-conference. I think that might be help.
So it's now, we have now, so the original plan was that we discuss half an hour and then we leave and let the audience discuss among them as well. Shall we do that?
Sure.
Yeah.
So thank you very much to the panel, Francesca for emceeing. Are there any final remarks from the panelists? Any closing remarks you'd like to say that we missed out so far? Or any questions you'd like to just open up, a question that you'd like people to discuss out in Virtual Town?
I just feel this AI community need to do something seriously to improve diversity and to help those underrepresented countries or areas or populations.
Mm-hmm. Others, questions you'd like to throw out? Final remarks?
I think it's the question of what each individual of us can do and not just rely on organizations to do it. And even if it's just the awareness of that diversity is missing.
Yeah, even being aware about diversity. Yes, great.
Do you want to say something at the end?
Yeah, so primarily is in while I'm working on the technologies using AI, I would certainly like to look at what is the population, at least as in always keeping in mind that what population my technology is accessible today. And what's the gap, as in just being aware of what's the gap and then feeding in that what efforts that I need to take to fill that gap over time. So it's always going to be an iterative process. We would not be able to solve the problem in one day, but just being aware of let's say if I'm working in English and providing an English language technology, just being aware that this technology is not available for these many languages today, and maybe I need to start working with the community to build data sets so that eventually this technology would be available to the other languages. So I would say that that's going to be my thought process.
I just want to add one maybe aspect, because we so far we talk about diversity. It's all about diversity of communities of different people, but also I think the diversity in research topic is not enough to me, at least to me. I'm working in the area of machine learning, but nowadays machine learning is dominated by deep learning. But back to around 2 decades ago, when I started my postgraduate study in this area, is not like this. There was many excellent working on SVM, on neural network, on bias network, and all those excellent models. But nowadays, fewer people are interested in those so-called traditional models. I think we should. I would like to take this chance to recall people to pay more attention to those traditional models rather than just very popular deep learning models, because deep learning is awesome, but not everything. We do find certain problems that deep learning cannot do very well, and we are paying more attention in recent years to those like decision tree, like traditional, not so deep neural networks, and we found a very good result. And I'm glad to see more and more people are realizing this issue and pay more attention to non-deep learning techniques. That's I just want to take this chance. This is a very precious chance for me to recall that. Thank you.
Thank you. I thought spontaneously about biodiversity, and if there are extinct animals, the knowledge is gone. Thank you very much.
So a virtual round of applause. Thank you to all the panelists. And Francesca, there we are. And I see that some people have been live tweeting the panel under the @DiverseInAI Twitter account. So we can carry on the conversation both online and in the virtual chair environment. So thanks again to the panelists, and enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, and we now just leave.
Jake, thanks very much. Are we all done here?
Thank you. Yeah, we're all done here, so you can leave freely. Thank you.
Great. Thanks a lot, Jake, for your help. Thanks everyone for being part of the panel. I wish you a pleasant afternoon or wherever you are in your time zone. I think I might go back to bed here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Glad to join. Bye-bye.
Great
Bye-bye.
conversation.
Thanks.
Thank you.